If you enjoy stories about unfaithful husbands, this channel is for you. Leave a like and support us by subscribing to the channel. I told Nathan the same thing on our wedding night that I told him on our first date. If you ever want someone else, just leave. Don't lie. Don't sneak around. If another woman can take you from me, she can keep you. He laughed both times. Said I was his forever. Said he'd never met a woman so secure, so grounded. He called it one of the things he loved most about me. That was 3 years ago. Now I'm standing in the kitchen of our Chicago penthouse at 11:30 at night, still in my work blazer, staring at 2 wine glasses on the counter, both used, both recently rinsed but not quite clean. Nathan is already in bed, pretending to be asleep. My name is Claire Whitfield. I'm 34, a senior financial auditor at Mercer & Lowe, and I have spent the last 4 months telling myself that what was happening inside my own home was nothing worth worrying about. I was wrong. It started 6 months ago when Petra moved into the apartment next door. She was 26, originally from Poland, with sharp green eyes and the kind of quiet confidence that fills a room without trying. Her husband, a man she called Gregor, was supposedly a shipping executive based in Hamburg. He was never here. She was always alone. The first time she knocked on our door, she brought a bottle of wine and an apology for the noise during her move-in. Nathan answered. I watched from the hallway as she smiled at him, tilted her head slightly and said, I hope we'll be good neighbors. He smiled back the exact same way. I work 60-hour weeks. Nathan works from home as a freelance brand consultant. It made sense in the beginning that he would be the one building that neighborly friendship. He was here. I wasn't. First it was coffee in the mornings, then opinions on her furniture layout. Then she discovered Nathan loved cycling, something I have never had patience for, and started joining his weekend rides. They'd come back sweaty and laughing, finishing each other's sentences about routes and weather and the best coffee shop on the lakefront trail. I told myself it was harmless. Then the dinners started. You work so late, she told him one evening, when I came home to find her sitting at my dining table. In Poland, we never let people eat alone. She said it like a kindness. I smiled, sat down, and ate the meal she had cooked in my kitchen. That night, lying in the dark next to Nathan, I replayed every moment. The way she touched his arm when she laughed, the way he leaned toward her when she spoke. I didn't say anything. I was testing my own philosophy, and I was terrified of what the results might be. 4 months into Petra's residency next door, our apartment had quietly become an extension of hers. She knew where we kept the extra coffee pods. She had a key. Nathan gave it to her 3 months ago for emergencies, and she used it with a comfort that bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Not every day, but enough. I travel for work twice a month. Client audits in other cities, 2 or 3 nights at a time. Before Petra, Nathan would text me goodnight without fail. Now sometimes the texts came late. Sometimes they didn't come at all. And when I asked about it the next morning, he'd say he fell asleep early, that the days were long, that he was tired. Nathan had never been tired before Petra. I didn't confront him. That wasn't my style. I was the woman who believed in trust, in freedom, in not being the kind of wife who checked her husband's phone or demanded explanations for every hour unaccounted for. I had built my entire identity around that philosophy. My mother had always called it reckless. I had always called it evolved. So instead I watched. I noticed that he started wearing better clothes on his work-from-home days, that he got a haircut without mentioning it, that he began cooking Polish recipes he'd found online, dishes I didn't recognize, and when I asked where he'd learned them, he said simply, Petra showed me. I noticed that her name appeared in nearly every story he told. Petra mentioned this podcast. Petra tried that restaurant. Petra thinks the North Side has better energy than the South Side. I started counting. In one dinner conversation, he said her name 11 times. I didn't say a word, but the night I came home from a 3-day audit in Cincinnati and found a woman's cardigan draped over the back of the couch, one that was not mine, something shifted inside me, not dramatically. Not with tears or confrontation. It was quieter than that. It was the feeling of a door closing. I picked up the cardigan, recognized the faint scent of her perfume, and folded it neatly on the kitchen counter. Then I poured myself a glass of water, changed out of my travel clothes, and sat on the edge of the bed watching Nathan sleep. He looked peaceful. I wondered if he would look that peaceful if he knew what I was thinking. The next morning I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, the way she always does, as if she'd been waiting. Mom, I said, I think something is happening with Nathan and the neighbor. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Claire Elizabeth Whitfield, she said. How long have you known? My mother's name is Diane. She is 61 years old, a retired school principal from Evanston, and she has never once in her life been accused of staying quiet when something needed to be said. She drove to Chicago that same afternoon. She sat across from me at my kitchen table with both hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched, and she listened while I told her everything: the dinners, the cardigan, the haircut, the 11 times in one conversation, the late text that stopped coming. When I finished, she put the mug down carefully and looked at me the way she used to when I was 16 and had made a decision she considered deeply unwise. And you haven't said anything to him, she said. It wasn't a question. No. Because of your philosophy. Because I want to know who he really is, I said. If Petra can take him with home-cooked meals and bike rides, then he was never really mine. My mother closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her expression had moved past frustration into something closer to grief. That is the most intelligent-sounding foolish thing I have ever heard you say. We argued for 2 hours. She said I was enabling betrayal by refusing to name it. I said I was gathering information before acting. She said I was protecting my pride by framing passivity as wisdom. I said I was protecting my marriage by not destroying it with accusations I couldn't yet prove. She left that evening without resolution, but not without a warning. I love you, she said at the door, and because I love you, I am not going to watch this happen and do nothing. I didn't think much of it at the time. I should have. 3 days later, things inside my home changed in a way I hadn't expected. I came home on a Wednesday evening to find Nathan and Petra in the guest bedroom, both of them paint-splattered, laughing at something on his phone. She was wearing one of his old university sweatshirts. They hadn't heard me come in. "Oh, you're early," Petra said, turning around. She didn't look guilty. She looked mildly inconvenienced. "We're fixing the color. The first shade was all wrong." Nathan looked at me with the expression of a man who had already prepared his explanation. "She has a great eye for design," he said. I thought we could finally sort out the guest room. I looked at the two of them standing together in the half-painted room, easy and familiar in a way that took years to build, and I understood with complete clarity that something had already happened between them that I could not undo by pretending otherwise. I smiled. "It looks great," I said. And I walked to the kitchen to make dinner, alone, while my husband finished painting a room with another woman wearing his clothes. My mother called the following Tuesday. I was at the office, between meetings, coffee going cold on my desk. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and I need you to not be angry until I finish." I already knew by her tone. "You hired someone," I said. A pause. "His name is Ray. He's been doing this for 20 years. He's discreet and thorough, and I trust him completely." I wanted to be furious. I had built my entire self-image around being the kind of woman who didn't do things like this, who didn't surveil her husband, who didn't reduce her marriage to photographs and timestamps. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice flat. "What has he found?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Nathan goes to her apartment every day while you're at work. He's been doing it for at least 2 months that Ray can confirm. The visits last between 1 and 3 hours. She stopped. "Ray has photographs, Claire. They're not explicit, but they are intimate, enough that there's no reasonable alternative explanation." I sat very still. "Send them." They arrived within minutes. I opened them at my desk with the door closed. Nathan and Petra on her balcony, his arm around her shoulders, her head tilted toward him, both of them looking out at the city like people who belong to each other. Another photo, her living room, the two of them on the couch, her legs across his lap, his hand resting on her ankle. A third, Nathan standing behind her at what appeared to be her bathroom mirror, both of them laughing at something in the reflection. The photographs didn't break me the way I expected. What broke me was realizing I wasn't surprised. I had known. Somewhere underneath the philosophy and the pride and the careful architecture of my self-assurance, I had known for months. I had simply chosen the comfort of uncertainty over the pain of confirmation. I closed the photos. I finished my coffee. I sat through 2 more meetings. That night I came home at my normal time. Nathan was making pasta. Petra was not there. We ate dinner and talked about nothing. A client of his. A project of mine. A documentary we kept meaning to watch. He kissed me before we went to sleep. I lay in the dark for a long time afterward, staring at the ceiling, running the numbers in my head the way I do when an audit isn't adding up. The philosophy I had been so proud of was built on a quiet assumption that Nathan was the kind of man who would never actually cross that line. I had been auditing the wrong variable all along. It was a Thursday night when everything stopped being theoretical. I left work 2 hours early. Not because I planned to catch anyone, I told myself that, but because I was tired, and the headache behind my eyes had been building since morning, and I just wanted to go home. The elevator opened onto our floor, and I heard them before I reached our door. Not voices, laughter, low, comfortable, private laughter, the kind that doesn't perform itself for anyone else. It was coming from inside my apartment. I used my key slowly. The entryway was dark. Down the hall, the living room glowed with warm light, and I could hear music playing softly, a playlist I didn't recognize. I stood in the hallway for a moment. Then I walked in. They were seated at opposite ends of the couch, a distance between them that felt recently created. 2 glasses of wine on the coffee table. Petra in a dress I had never seen, her shoes off, her feet tucked beneath her. Nathan sitting forward with his elbows on his knees, the way he sits when he's been caught mid-conversation and doesn't know how to end it. They both looked at me. "Claire," Nathan said, "you're home early." "I have a headache," I said. Petra uncurled herself from the couch with the fluid ease of someone who was not remotely ashamed. "I should go," she said, reaching for her shoes. "We were just talking." She looked at me directly when she said it, not with guilt, but with something more like assessment. Nathan walked her to the door. I heard them exchange quiet words in the hallway that I couldn't make out. When he came back, he sat down across from me. "It's not what it looked like," he said. I looked at him, at the man I had married, sitting in our living room in the apartment we had chosen together, using the sentence that every person who has done exactly what it looked like eventually says. "What did it look like?" I asked. He didn't answer. I picked up the wine glass closest to me, hers, and carried it to the kitchen sink. I rinsed it carefully, set it on the drying rack, and went to bed. He came in 20 minutes later and apologized without specifying what for. I said goodnight. I didn't sleep. At 2 a.m, I took out my phone and typed a single message to my mother. "You were right. What do we do now?" She replied in 4 seconds, as if she'd been waiting all along. "Ray is already watching. Give me 48 hours. The 48 hours my mother asked for changed everything. Ray, the investigator she had hired, had been thorough. What he delivered was not just photographs of Nathan and Petra together. It was a profile, a careful, documented picture of a woman who was not at all who she claimed to be. Gregor, the shipping executive husband in Hamburg, did not exist. His social media accounts were constructed from stolen photographs, stock images, and generic captions. Ray had traced the accounts back to a creation date that coincided almost exactly with Petra's lease signing at our building. The entire backstory, the controlling husband, the financial dependence, the loneliness, had been manufactured. But for what purpose? That question was still unanswered when my mother called me on a Friday morning with something new. "Ray followed her last night," she said, "after she left your apartment. She didn't go home, Claire. She met 2 people at a bar in River North, a man and a woman. They were there for nearly 2 hours. Ray managed to get photographs of the documents on the table." My stomach dropped before she finished the sentence. "What kind of documents?" "Building floor plans, resident schedules, a list of names." A pause. "Your name is on the list. So is your employer." I set down my coffee cup very carefully. "I am a financial auditor. My work involves direct access to the private financial records of high-net-worth individuals and corporations. I carry case files. I work from home several nights a week. I have a home office with a filing cabinet and a laptop that auto-logs in when opened." I thought about every time Petra had been inside our apartment. I thought about the 3 occasions Nathan had mentioned, casually, without concern, that she had stayed for a while after he ran a quick errand. "She was just watching TV," he had said. I thought about my home office, the door I never locked because I had never imagined I needed to. "Mom," I said, "I think this is bigger than an affair." I didn't go to Nathan first. I went to my laptop. I opened the browser history on a Tuesday morning while Nathan was in the shower. What I found made the floor feel unstable beneath my feet. Searches I had not made. My clients' names typed into search engines, their companies, their current legal disputes. Estimated settlement values pulled from financial news sites. The timestamps told a story I didn't want to read. Every session matched a day Nathan had mentioned Petra being in the apartment while he stepped out briefly. The sessions lasted between 40 minutes and an hour and 20. Long enough to go through a filing cabinet, long enough to photograph documents, long enough to do serious damage. I closed the laptop and sat very still. Then I called the one person I needed, Lena, my closest colleague at Mercer & Lowe. We had worked together for 6 years. She was methodical, private, and she had helped me through 2 of the most complex audits of my career. I trusted her completely. I met her at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the office and told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she opened her own laptop and pulled up the firm's client database with her credentials. "Tell me exactly which files you have at home," she said. We spent 3 hours cross-referencing. 3 active cases had files in my home office. All 3 involved clients with significant assets and ongoing financial disputes. All 3 were the kind of cases where advanced knowledge of strategy or financial positioning would be worth a great deal to the right, or wrong, buyer. "You have to report this," Lena said, "to the firm and to the police. If I report it without proof, I destroy my career on a suspicion. And if you don't report it and something happens to those clients," I already knew the answer. That evening, I called Ray directly. I told him what I had found. He told me that the 2 people Petra had met in River North had been identified. The woman was named Sylvia Crane. The man was Sylvia's brother, a former building contractor named Dennis, who had previously worked for the property management company that owned our building. Dennis still had access credentials he was not supposed to have. Ray told me to let him make one more move before I went to the police. I agreed. 24 hours later, he called me back. "Someone is going to be in your apartment tonight," he said, "and it won't be Petra." I did not tell Nathan what I knew. I came home that evening at my usual time, made dinner, and behaved as though the week had been ordinary. Nathan seemed relieved by my calm. He talked about a client call, a cycling route he wanted to try on the weekend, a series he'd been watching. I listened. I nodded. I watched the clock. At 9:15, my phone buzzed. "Ray, he's in the building. Give it 10 minutes." I excused myself to the bedroom, saying I had a work call. I sat on the edge of the bed with my heart steady. Auditors learn to manage their breathing under pressure, and I dialed 911 at 9:22. I told the dispatcher there was an active intruder in my home office, that I was in the bedroom, that I needed officers immediately. Then I walked back to the living room and sat down across from Nathan. He looked at me with the particular expression of someone who doesn't yet know what they don't know. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Not entirely," I said. The officers arrived in 6 minutes. 2 went directly to the home office. 2 stayed with us. We heard the sharp commands from down the hall. "Don't move. Hands where I can see them." And Nathan stood up so fast he knocked his knee against the coffee table. They brought him out in handcuffs 2 minutes later. Dennis Crane, 32 years old, dressed in dark clothing with a bag over his shoulder. Inside the bag, my client folders, a secondary camera, and a portable hard drive. He claimed he was there for maintenance. The officers looked at the folders. They looked at the hard drive. They looked at the bag. Nobody believed him. Nathan stood in our living room with his face completely emptied of color. "How did you—" he started. "I'm an auditor," I said. "I follow the numbers." My mother arrived 20 minutes later with Ray. She walked in, looked at the handcuffed man on our dining chair, looked at me, and simply took my hand. She didn't say "I told you so." She didn't have to. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. The police took Dennis Crane into custody. They recovered the documents. Nothing had been transmitted yet. Ray had moved fast enough. Detectives came the following morning to take formal statements, and I spent 4 hours walking 2 investigators through everything. The browser history, the timeline, Petra's fabricated identity, the meeting in River North, the floor plans, and the list with my name on it. One of the detectives, a composed woman named Torres, told me that Petra's real name was likely not Petra at all, that they were running her through several databases, that this pattern, manufactured intimacy, access gained through a spouse, theft of professional data, had appeared in at least 2 other cities in the past 3 years. "You're not the first," Detective Torres said. "I know," I said. "That doesn't make it easier." They arrested Petra that afternoon at the building entrance. She came home carrying groceries as though it were a Tuesday like any other, and 2 plainclothes officers met her at the elevator. I watched from the lobby through the glass. She didn't cry. She didn't protest. She looked around once, quickly, with the precise eyes of someone calculating exit options, and then she went with them quietly. That told me everything I needed to know about who she actually was. Nathan was questioned separately. He told the detectives everything, about the visits, the time she spent alone in the apartment, the key he had given her. He answered every question honestly and fully, and the investigators were satisfied that he had not participated knowingly. That was the legal question. There were other questions he still had to answer to me. We sat in the kitchen that night after everyone had gone. The apartment was very quiet. Nathan looked like a man who had been awake for 3 days, though it had only been 1. "I didn't know," he said. "I know you didn't. I thought I was helping someone. She told me Gregor was Nathan." I said his name quietly, and he stopped. "I know what she told you. I know you believed her. I know you're not a criminal." I looked at him steadily. "But you made choices. Every day for 4 months, you made choices. And those choices put my clients at risk. They put my career at risk. They put us at risk." I paused. "And you kept all of it from me." He didn't argue. There was nothing to argue. The divorce papers arrived on a Monday, 4 months after Dennis Crane was walked out of my apartment in handcuffs. I signed them on a Tuesday, not with anger, not with tears, but with the particular clarity that comes when you have finally stopped lying to yourself about what something is. Nathan and I divided everything fairly. He didn't fight me on a single term. I think he understood that fairness was the only thing he could still offer me, and to his credit, he offered it completely. The professional consequences were real and lasting. Mercer and Lowe did not fire me, but I was removed from high-profile cases for 8 months, required to complete additional security training, and my path to senior partner was delayed by 2 years. I accepted every consequence without appeal. I had been careless with things that were not mine to be careless with, and the people who trusted me deserved better. I rebuilt it, slowly, and without shortcuts. Petra, whose real name turned out to be Mara Szabo, with a warrant in 2 other states, pleaded guilty to charges of criminal trespass, theft of confidential documents, and identity fraud. Dennis Crane accepted a plea deal. Sylvia Crane was convicted at trial. Their operation had targeted 4 other professionals in Chicago and Minneapolis over 3 years. In each case, the method was identical: find someone lonely or trusting, build intimacy quickly, gain access, extract information, disappear. They had been very good at it. My mother never once said "I told you so." Not when the arrest happened. Not during the depositions. Not after the divorce was finalized. She simply showed up, with tea, with groceries, with the specific kind of quiet that means I am here, every single time I needed her. One Sunday evening, about 6 months after everything ended, she asked me how I was doing. Not about the case, not about work, how I was actually doing. I thought about it honestly before I answered. "My philosophy wasn't wrong," I said. "It was just incomplete. I confused trusting my husband with trusting everyone around him. Those aren't the same thing." She nodded. "And Nathan? He was manipulated," I said. "But he also chose every single day to keep secrets from me. Being manipulated doesn't cancel out the choices." She was quiet for a moment. "And you?" she asked. "What do you choose now?" I looked out the window of my new apartment. Smaller, on a quieter street, with better locks, and a view of a park where people walk dogs in the early mornings. "I choose to start over," I said, carefully, and with my eyes open this time. My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand once. Outside, the city kept moving, and so did I. Thank you for watching until the end. Your support is very important. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.